it's Julie Migneault here, and I'm really excited to introduce today's guest. Michael H. Cohen is a healthcare attorney living in California, and he's joining us today because I've been really inspired by his personal journey and how he's bridged that with his professional world. And I thought he'd be a really great example for us on how you can really live your passion and still be in life that can, for some of us, seem like a lot of responsibility. So welcome. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Pleasure. Great to be here, Julie. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into healthcare law, and how has that gone hand in hand with your own personal journey of spirituality and consciousness?
Sure. Well, I started out after law school, and then I went to business school. Then I worked for a judge and did some other things. And then I started out my career as a lawyer on Wall Street. And so I was a very mainstream, conventional corporate lawyer. I did securities law, I did banking law, I did high-powered M&A deals. So I did all of that stuff. And part of being a Wall Street lawyer is that I didn't get any sleep. And so one of the things that I did to help with that was I took a course in Transcendental Meditation, TM. And so I'd be like having these, 23-hour days. And then with TM, you meditate. Yeah, brutal, I know. But the good news is they had a little room where it was dark and you could just go and rest. And so what I would do is I would do my 20 minutes of TM twice in 23 hours. And I found that I would get really refreshed.
Wow.
So that was really the beginning. It's like I knew that there was something else that I could access that was really powerful.
What was it, other than feeling refreshed, what was the experience? I mean, that...
we call it going inside.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, where do you go when you go inside? It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So that's basically, what I was learning is to go inside. And then what I found is that the more that I did it, I mean, in TM, one of the ideas is to produce bliss. It produces a lot of happiness. Mm-hmm. And so I found that indeed, like I got to this quiet, calm place where I wasn't drafting documents and I wasn't proofreading and I wasn't like, micro-analyzing the impact of a word or a letter on a deal. And, I was able to just be somewhere else. And then the more I did it, the more I had experiences inside. So like dreaming, you can have more and more lucid experiences. Mm-hmm. And eventually, that just expanded into lots of other things like yoga and lots of things. I'll get to that.
Okay.
But through that, I became very interested in, what else there was in consciousness. And so I started to try to put that together with what it meant to be a lawyer.
Right.
And basically, the more I researched, the more I realized there was this area that was developing that people were calling alternative medicine. So it's not really medicine. It's really about health and healing and wellness and being a total human being. And I thought, okay, what is that as a lawyer? Well, that's healthcare law. So that's how that started.
Wow. It kind of led you right to the apex of consciousness and law.
Yes. It was my own particular apex and one that fit in with the times, because in medicine, a lot of doctors were moving toward integrative medicine, which is to integrate alternative complementary therapies like herbal medicine, even Reiki, to help cancer patients, for example, to help people, feel better and support their immune function and so on. So there was a huge parallel movement in medicine. And then Congress created an Office of Alternative Medicine. So there actually became like an official U.S. government sanction to this whole body of work. And so my part was to develop the legal rules that support a world in which we look to much more than just conventional medicine. We look to all aspects of healing a human being. There's Bernie Siegel and Deepak Chopra and, all these other docs and Dr. Atkins and, lots and lots of people that started creating this wave. Judith Orloff, this wave of integrating body, mind, spirit. Herb Benson talking about the relaxation response. And so there was a whole world of docs that were getting involved. Then there was the government. So then I brought in the legal piece to support that.
So what is the legal piece? What are the main issues that come up when dealing with this area of body of work?
Well, it turns out that there are lots of them, and it depends on what your particular situation is.
Yeah.
So it can be everything from Well, let me just start by saying that really, the rules are the rules that apply to healthcare in general. So we talk about healing, we talk about complementary, integrative care. We're really bringing over the rules from regular law and moving them over to complementary medicine. So that's the basic premise. So, for example, a physician has a duty to talk to a patient about all the reasonable and feasible options that are available for care. So you just take that one. That's called informed consent.
Right.
So that's an obligation that is a legal and ethical obligation in healthcare law for a physician. So now what about if there's like an herb? Let's say that someone is depressed and they don't want to take the medication. Let's say they're not severely, it's mild to moderate. But they might be able to take St. John's wort, an herb, or
Right.
Another formula. So the idea is there that if you're really going to look at it, this duty of telling a patient what the options are, why not include options that have evidence, even if they don't come from the conventional base, but they're kind of pushing the envelope a little bit. But there's at least enough evidence that it makes sense to talk about them. So that's how you can take a very mainstream, well-accepted principle of law and bring it over into this other arena. So that would be just one from the doctor side, for example.
Right. That's beautiful. I mean, imagine if that were true. I know my parents, they've been in a mainstream medical model their whole lives. And then I'll say, well, have you ever thought of this Chinese herb? And they're like, what? It's not in their frame of reference. So
it's like, is that grown on Mars, or where did that come from?
Yeah, but it's so powerful, and it can help, whatever. It may or may not be the solution for someone, but it's definitely beautiful to have our legal system supporting us in getting all of the information that we need. So cool.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a powerful principle about information
Yeah.
and disclosure and having real conversation so that people are empowered to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of what I wrote about also in the beginning, was this movement from a model that's been very paternalistic, which comes from like the father archetype.
Yeah.
So it's like the father making the decisions, which, it's okay when you're little, but as you get older, and if your father's like Darth Vader, then you want to make your own decisions.
Right.
So actually, just a little Star Wars metaphor there, but just for fun. But, the idea is that people should be empowered to have full information to make their own decisions. And so we call that the value of autonomy. So there's this whole body of literature and ethics. And part of my work before I went back, so after practicing, I became a professor. Mm-hmm. And part of my work was to develop a body of scholarly work that could show how we could better balance, for example, paternalism and autonomy, because they're starting from two totally different ends of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. One is somebody else makes the decisions. The other is, oh my God, what if people make decisions but they don't have good information?
Right.
So how do we get empowered, autonomous people to make good decisions based on the best information in partnership with their caregivers?
And that's definitely a principle of most healing practitioners that come from a more holistic point of view, is how do we support the patient or the client, and not even calling them a patient, but calling them a client, to have that empowered ability to connect with what's best for them. So it's beautiful that it's your work is bringing it into the mainstream and even bringing awareness to that.
Yeah. Well, it's 2014. It's time.
It's time. So, most people who are listening to this show are people who really want to have that experience of really marrying their passions with what they do in the world, how they make a living. And so I really hear that you've been able to do that in a lot of ways. And so I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about that personal journey of like really finding this path, and if it was challenging, if it just kind of fell into place, or what is it in you that allowed that to come to be?
Nerves of steel. I mean, Superman, yes. Yeah, I mean, I think you got to find your inner superhero, basically. It seems very effortless right now. Like a lot of people from the outside go, oh, this is so obvious. And also, the times are a little bit different. This is an age where people are much freer to be themselves in one way. But, than even a couple of years ago, just because we have internet and texting and avatars online, and
right.
everything's much more open.
Right. It's easier to find your people who really can get you just being who you are. We're not stuck in local communities anymore. We can just get online and find people who can resonate with us. And
exactly. I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation, it's just amazing.
yeah.
So that wasn't possible, when it's like Houston, all that stuff, back in the ancient era of the 20th century. But, a lot of it for me was really like I just took one step at a time. So, I mean, there were many, many steps. I mean, I think TM was a big step for me, just to go inside. And then, of course, I was very rational and analytical, so I had to read all the literature. So, like, I was reading this book by a guy named Charles Tart called Altered States of Consciousness, so I'm working on this 100-page merger document, and then I go home and I'm reading about altered states of consciousness. I mean, it kind of sounds a little science fiction-y, but I was very active. I would read books like How Do I Contact My Spirit Guides, and Is This Real? And so, a series of adventures. And I studied Ericksonian hypnotherapy. And so I learned about trance work and how to go into trance, and is everything a trance? But maybe my law firm is a trance, of sorts. And really, I was just so mainstream that I was completely passionate about my career, and I had to stay within those parameters. But at the same time, I did a lot of personal exploration. And so one of the things we have in common is Barbara Brennan School.
Right.
So I remember my first day in Barbara Brennan School. I mean, I went in there because this book literally fell into my hands.
A lot of people say that about her book.
Does it levitate?
It levitates and it literally falls into people's hands, apparently.
I think it has wings. It must just because when I think about it, didn't really fall. It sort of went up before it went back down. Kind of
it's for you. It's not for the floor.
It kind of made this arc, and there might have even been a person in between, but I might be elaborating a little bit, embellishing the story. But
you wouldn't do that.
No, I wouldn't. No, I was right there. The truth is, but it did kind of make this arc toward me. But the truth is, I stepped forward at the same time, so it was right. But I looked at that book, and I saw it was very well put together, the way she made this bridge, as I say, in the medical world, people bridge body, mind, and then you got to go body, mind, spirit, and you go, what's that? Speaking of spirit, I think that a playful spirit is playing with my tape on my camera, so if you only see the top of my head, let me know, because
now we got you. Just for everybody who's listening, while you get that figured out, let's make a plug for Barbara. The book is called Hands of Light, and her second book is called Light Emerging, so check that out too.
Hands of Light and Light Emerging, absolutely, yeah. So like I say, this is a different age in a way. I mean, it's a more open age, because, for example, Therapeutic Touch, which the nurses do, that took a while to become more accepted. But about 2 years ago, I went to India to help teach nurses Therapeutic Touch. It was with a group of doctors and nurses. And, it's pretty obvious, and there's literature. For one thing, it calms people down when you put your hands above their body and you soothe and unruffle their field. And, okay, well, all the science, maybe we don't know quite what it is. But, it's clear that that's powerful. So, I met Barbara, I got the book, I went in the program, and I remember my first day, I think one of the deans said, how many people here see angels? And I looked around, and 90% of the people raised their hands.
That would have freaked me out on day one.
I thought, oh my God, what am I doing in this room? Maybe I should run now. And that was just the first hour.
I know. I had a first day too.
You had the first day, the same reaction? What is this?
I didn't have that reaction, but I remember there were many people who were like, this isn't really for me. It's you really have to let go of those mental concepts that have kind of can keep you in a box, and open to something that's way beyond the normal paradigm in that school. And so it's challenging in that way. It's challenging to the ego to say, okay, let's just open and see what's here.
Yeah, what's real.
Right.
Not only that, but what's real for me. What's my relationship to all this, and why am I going in this direction?
Yeah.
And they kept talking about being a healer. And the first year, I mean, I was a Wall Street lawyer my first year, probably into my second. And so I didn't know what this whole identity, I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it was. Like, what am I going to do healing people? Like, I've got a day job.
Right.
And it didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. What I really love that you said that I want to call attention to for everyone is that, how did you actually make this transition to where you're bringing your passions and being who you are more fully into your work? And what you said to me was you just took the next step. I love that. So many times we think we've got to have it all figured out, or we have to have the plan. And honestly, we just need to take the next step.
Exactly. I mean, like in my career, so I left the Wall Street firm, and I became a professor. And then as I was a law school faculty member, I developed teaching and courses. So I taught healthcare law. And so that led me into like all these areas like informed consent and, licensing and how is herbal medicine regulated by the FDA, and, what about HIPAA and privacy, and how does this all come together? How does the law tell chiropractors what they can do versus what acupuncturists can do? And what about people who don't have a license that are doing different things, and what's that category? So that gave me a real platform and to explore. And at the same time, I was in the school. I remember one time actually, we had these circles, these healing circles, which were, I think, just so people understand, like at some point we should talk about, it's not necessarily physical healing. Like healing is a very broad concept.
Right. We need to take a short break, so that's a good thought to pause on. Let's get into what that really is and how that, how we can share that with our audience. We'll just take a short break, everybody. We'll be back with Michael H. Cohen. You can find out more about his law practice at michaelhcohen.com. All right, welcome back. I'm here with Michael H. Cohen. Hi, Michael.
Hello. Hi, Julie.
Thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear how all of these pieces of your life just unfolded and started to come together. Your law experience could translate into a whole new body of work that was really needed, but also bridges consciousness and healing.
Thank you for saying that. Appreciate that.
So right before the break, we were talking a little bit about, what is healing and it as a bigger body of work than physical healing. You want to say a little bit more about that?
Well, sure. I mean, there's a lot to say, because it's easy to talk about in a way, but what really happens when you're completely present with somebody is just so powerful and such a heart-centered experience that it's just like I've had moments when like the love just exploded through me. I can't even describe what that was.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a moment like I was on a bus in New York City. I think I was like in my second year of the program, and I was like back in New York, riding. I forget which one it was. Like it goes up Broadway or something, and I just felt like this love just come through me. It was just so incredible, and it was literally like blessing. Like this blessing came through, just this universal blessing. And I felt this love for every person on the bus. And it's like, I just walked through. And then what's so interesting is then I got off the bus and I was just me again,
Yeah.
And it's that ability to go back and forth. Like you stay a real grounded, centered, authentic, vulnerable person with personal challenges and struggles and just trying to figure it out. And what am I doing? Could I please have the answers? Could someone please put this together for me? And then you go through like these universal transcendental experiences, which are really beneficial. So it's easy to say, well, healing, like we're not, just to be clear to the audience, we're not pulling chicken livers out of people or, doing that kind of stuff.
I'm not doing that. Maybe some healers are.
I mean, unless they're made out of rubber, you happen to have one. But, it's just really about connecting at the deepest level and it's really personal growth is what it is. I mean, that's what intrigued me.
Yeah.
Going back to Hands of Light, like she took psychology and she started with like Wilhelm Reich and the defense structures. Mm-hmm. And she took that and then she put it into what she called the bioenergetic paradigm. Mm-hmm. So it's like looking at the energy field and understanding the world in terms of the information that's contained in these other dimensions of living that maybe are not reducible to biochemistry.
Right. I always like to use an analogy for how we as a healer or someone who studied with Barbara Brennan, and there are many other modalities. When you open to that way of looking at the world through that energetic template, like, okay, it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever taken an art class, but if you're taking an art class, I've taken drawing and watercolors, and whenever I'm taking a class like that, or maybe I'm taking, a science class, whatever, all of a sudden I start to see the world through that framework, like I'll start to see the sky in shades of blue, like I do when I'm painting them. And
Wow.
or like I'm drawing, and everything all of a sudden when I'm looking out in the world, I'm starting to see it through perspective, like, oh, that's in front of that. And if you foreshadow, like, if I was taking business classes, I'd go into a baseball game and I'd say, what's the business model? And I'd start to look at the business model of the baseball game I was at. So we all look at life through these different perspectives. And Barbara Brennan really gave this framework for really seeing a human a little bit more fully than just the physical or the psychological, but really seeing them from that greater perspective. And you start to just see the world from that perspective, and things change in really big ways.
Yeah, everything changes. Yeah, everything.
Yes. No going back.
There's no going back.
Yeah.
But it's a breaking through.
Yeah.
And it's emotional. And one thing that I really respect about her is that she always emphasized the emotional authenticity and the breakthrough and sort of pushing through. It's not about ego. It's not about, oh, I can do this. It's it's an understanding that comes from within. Mm-hmm. But I'd be curious, like, how you see the world, and then I can share, because this, like, we talk about the chakras and the energy systems. I mean, for me now, years after graduating, this is natural. This is how, when I go into a meeting, this is how I experience people's energies. And even when I was teaching law, I noticed it's not about the words, because, well, academia can be kind of a difficult place sometimes.
Yeah.
And or the corporate environment, it's not about the words, it's about the intention.
Right.
And it's about what people are really communicating underneath. And so there are a lot of techniques. There's face reading. There's, I don't know, people that are sensitive in different ways. But, and that can also be, it can be a business tool. It can be a healing tool. Like, how do you experience that coming out of the school? Maybe you could share, and then I can compare.
Yeah, I will share, but I just want to touch, like, you answered my next question that I had for you, which is, okay, you went to school for healing and you've done transcendental meditation and all of these different things. How are you bringing it back into the mainstream legal profession? And I just heard you say it's by, and you tell me if there's more, if I got it right, but you see people at their energetic being and their intention, and you're relating from that place.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, you relate to people in a more real way, and I find that I listen more. And when I speak, I listen for what comes through. So it comes from a different place. And oftentimes it'll touch people.
Yeah.
Or it'll be funny and spontaneous in a way that I've become funny. And I wasn't really funny as a Wall Street corporate lawyer.
No way.
I mean, I'm sure there are Wall Street corporate lawyers. There's probably one who's a comedian who's going to write in and say, hey, I was just on Saturday Night Live, but, I wasn't funny when I was in that. I was, very contained, and I didn't know that I had the freedom to be all these other things.
Yeah. Do you think that it's possible for our listeners? What are the things that made it possible for you to kind of bring that into your everyday life? Sometimes it's not about getting a new career in order to find the fulfillment. Sometimes it's just bringing those new states of being, or allowing ourselves to be more who we are right where we are.
Yeah.
Did it affect, did you have worries about that? Like, if I'm really just this funny guy, are people going to take me seriously, or?
Well, sure. I mean, you have to pay my image consultant, $10,000 a day to make sure that it all, lines up. But, part of it is just letting go and taking risks. I would say, one of the key things that I learned in school is to take risks, take emotional risks. And as a corollary to that, a major lesson for me was emotional vulnerability is strength. Like, it takes a huge amount of strength to completely allow your emotions to just rip through your body, And if you can do that and get through to the other side of that, I mean, it's so powerful to know that you have a container for that. Mm-hmm. And I think in our culture, people are very afraid of their emotions. Like, for example, one thing that's new on my journey is I'm taking improv classes, and I love it because people will say the most outrageous things, and they're hilarious, and they let themselves take risks. It doesn't matter if it works or doesn't work.
Right.
You go with the next impulse.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're a person that has impulse control problems, you probably need to see a shrink. But if you're a person, serious problem, but if you're a person that is very well-mannered and very contained, you went to the right schools and you were in the right corporate environment, and you can wear the, if you're a woman, you wear the Chanel suit or you wear the Hermes scarf or whatever it is, the pearls. I had my Hugo Boss. I still have all that stuff. And, the narrow Italian shoes. If you can do that and you can be appropriate in those environments, for me, a lot of it is the ability to just completely let it out, and to have the strength. And if that means sometimes going into places within ourselves that are painful, knowing that you can come out the other side. This is something that a lot of people only experience when they're grieving.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, obviously, like, there are a lot of people that say, well, don't recycle the past because we don't want to get caught in it. But to some extent, like, there are these deep things, and everyone has their own. It just has to come out in some way.
Yes.
It has to be healed to be free.
Right.
It's like someone said to me, if you don't resolve this in this relationship, it'll be there in the next one. Like, you'll bring in the next person, but it'll be the same exact thing.
Right.
So might as well deal with it now.
Yes. Yeah, and that is the scary choice, and it is the strong choice. And, when we do that, when we choose to face that part of ourselves that hasn't felt free, we do face rejection or, feeling like it's not accepted, all those things. That's what we're facing. But then we also open to all the love and the freedom and the things that we really seek that are on the other side of that. And we realize we survive it usually when those big emotions come, or when we do things that are true for us but that are inappropriate. So
completely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. There's like a doorway. There's like a doorway where you give yourself permission.
Yeah.
It's almost like you have to pass through like a little bit of the dark side to integrate and come into the light.
Yeah.
But don't hurt anybody,
And get support. You don't have to do that alone. And what
get support.
Yeah, what your part of your journey was that you were in communities that were supporting that, you bringing that into all aspects of your life. So
completely.
Yeah.
That was part of the beauty of the school, is having that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful part.
And I miss that. I miss that because when I got back to my law school faculty, or back to my, starting my own practice, like, people don't just look and really tune in. And it's interesting. I just saw this movie, Her, H-E-R. It's a little, have you seen it?
No.
It's a little, off topic because it's about a guy with a very sophisticated operating system, and she comes to understand him.
Okay.
And the voiceover is terrific. It's like, how can this guy fall in love with this computer? Look how weird this is, all the technology. But I think, so that's all weird. There's no question. Like, there's a fundamental, weirdness about it. It's part of the message of the movie. Like, technology, artificial intelligence is evolving. What's going to happen between humans? But the reason I bring it up is because there's like an empathy and a quality that comes through that character, which is very cleverly designed by the people who made the movie, that show like this guy feels listened to.
You're right.
And part of it is about the disconnection where people don't feel listened to. So many times one of my teachers would say, like, take a breath, just come back in, take a breath.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing.
And so simple. Yeah.
So I thought, let's take this into international diplomacy. Seriously, I thought this is the revolution. What if we all just stop and we just take a breath? Or what if we all do a centering exercise and visualize the common goal?
Right. How powerful, especially when you're talking about issues of healthcare law and the intricacies and everybody's differing points of view. And what a gift.
Yeah, especially.
Yeah.
What's that?
What a gift that you're bringing that and bridging, a lot of times those of us who feel called to studying consciousness and doing that inner work, it can be a challenging path at times to be the one that's kind of holding that space. So I honor you for doing that in your field.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good description. It's holding space.
Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end of our show today. So I want to point people to your website because I know that you have some really amazing sharing that you do on your blog about not just healthcare law, but also your own personal journey, and really you're integrating those two things. And so if you're someone who's listening in right now and you've been feeling like, how do I really be this greater part of myself that wants to express and do work that's meaningful, then, let Michael inspire you. And so I appreciate you inspiring us today.
I appreciate you for giving me this opportunity to share and for organizing the show.
Yeah, you're welcome. Is there any final words, any way that you want us to reach out or connect with you, or?
Stay connected on the inner planes and go forth and explore and, just be yourself. But thank you for having me, and it's a great privilege to share, a little bit of where I've been with you and have all the encouragement in the world. Have at it, because that's what life's about.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, everyone. This is Michael H. Cohen. You're here also with Julie Migneault. And come on and check us out at intentionradio.com. If you're watching on video today, there'll be a link to Michael's webpage. And stay tuned. We'll be back next week. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.